No worries.
Okay, there we go.
Good morning, everyone. We'll just give a few more minutes here for those to join us and jump on our Executive Council meeting today. I hope everybody is having a good summer and had a lovely 4th of July holiday. I'm sure everybody's very busy this time of year, so we appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. But we'll get a few more minutes. If you would as well, go ahead in the chat, and if you would just enter your name, that way we can, it'll help with our minutes and knowing who has joined us for today. The meeting. Right. Well, it is 5 after, so if everybody is good to go, I say we call the meeting to order today. Everybody good with that?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, wonderful, terrific. Well, good morning. My name is Elizabeth Kessler with the McHenry County Conservation District, serving in the role as chairperson. And I just want to thank everybody that has joined us today for this meeting. We have a very exciting meeting this morning. As always, it's a challenge on Zoom because we don't get to meet up face to face, and I know we're all longing to connect with one another, and but we want to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to engage with us and to just to raise your hand and to join in on the conversation. It is a participatory process versus us just pushing information out, because the Alliance is representative of us, and that's the we of all of us, and to continue to remind that we each play different roles in the organizations, and really to facilitate what makes us who we are as part of the Alliance and the great work that we do. As a matter of business this morning, we do have a few business items that we generally take care of, and then we'll really get into the fun stuff and really why we come together for the engagement process. So we need first an approval of the agenda for this morning.
Motion to approve.
Motion to
Jack.
approve. Who is that?
This is Jack Runner. Hi.
Jack, thank you so much. And do we have a second?
Second, Schultz.
Second by Ralph Schultz. Okay, any discussion on the agenda for today? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda for today's meeting, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, aye, great. Those opposed, nay. Okay, the agenda for today is adopted, which moves us now into our consent agenda. All of this information was presented and sent out in the past, and it is available through the link. We've got the treasurer's report for the second quarter, which would be April, May, and June of 2021. And then the approval of the Executive Council meeting minutes from April 15th, 2021. Do I have a motion, someone to move that forward?
Jack again.
Jack, thank you so much. Do we have a second?
Second, Jerry Edelman.
Second by Jerry Edelman. Thank you. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Okay, hearing none, the consent agenda has been approved. All right, thank you so much for that. All right, our next item of business we have this morning is to provide you an update on the JEDI work, the Justice, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and the consultant that we hired as the Alliance to assist us through this process. And just as a little bit of background, we are joined today by August Ball, who is the president owner of the firm and has been working with our working group, members of the steering committee, as well as our JEDI group, to assist us not only through the selection process. We came to you last year asking that we were looking to do work on this. We put together an RFQ for qualifications, and the working group identified the consultant which we felt best would assist us in this journey. And in meeting with August, she helped us identify our goals as an alliance. And so I am going to allow, and I can't speak as much to it, but I would hope that August, since you have not met her, she is a dynamic individual, very qualified in this space. And we're so glad to have her with us. So August, can I turn it over to you and let you take us through where we are and where we're hoping to go?
Absolutely. If someone could just give me hosting capacity, I can share my screen. Do a quick intro for folks who have not met me before. And thank you so much for letting me join you all today. Friends. So to give you a little background, again, my name is August Ball. I come to you from the ancestral lands of the Potawatomi and Menominee tribes here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm the founder and CEO of Cream City Conservation. We are a two-pronged social enterprise, which means that we take the profits from our consulting work that we do with environmental organizations like your own and provide paid employment and training experiences for young adults, predominantly of color, here in the Milwaukee area. So we started our work in 2016, but I have been in the conservation space now for over 15 years. We work in the space of land. We do this through a partnership with our local county parks department, the DNR, the U.S. Forest Service. Young adults get trained on how to do conservation work, forestry, wildlife management, and the like. We also work in the space of water. We do this through a partnership with the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District. These young adults get trained on green infrastructure installation, climate science, as well as community engagement. We also have crews that work in the food sovereignty space, and we do this in partnership with our public school system, our local university here, UW-Milwaukee, and the Boys and Girls Club. These young adults grow food from seed and sell it at local farmers markets to local restaurants. And when we were not in the global pandemic, selling salads at Brewer games, actually, on Sundays. We also work in the space of policy. And we do this through a partnership with Escuela Verde and the Alliance for Climate Education. We helped launch their programs in Madison and Milwaukee in 2018 and 19, respectively. The ACE has moved to a more decentralized model, but I'm still very proud to have been a part of that movement here to support young adults, teens specifically, in helping to register over 20,000 people to vote in last year's election. This is some photos of our students with elected officials. And new this year is our reentry program called Fresh Coast, Fresh Start, which engages returning citizens in careers in green infrastructure as well. They learned about and how to install permeable pavement. They get trained up in OSHA 30 and other certifications that would make them undeniably qualified roles in our industry. So this is just a couple examples of organizations that we've supported, not at all an exhaustive list. We work with around 20 organizations every year. So Here's our process and methodology for what will happen with the Alliance. We start off by assessing your organizational culture. And because you are an alliance, we are doing a multi-pronged approach to assessing the industry, which I'm really excited about. From there, we're going to move into establishing our foundational and advanced level understanding of racial equity, which then can lead us into obtaining tools that will help us establish the culture, the workplace practices necessary to attract and cultivate and retain top talent from a wide range of demographics. And then lastly, phase 3 is about customizing a strategy. So taking what we have learned from our benchmark assessment, this shared language that we have established with the education series, and then helping the Alliance establish a strategy moving forward to achieve its future desired state. So again, the goal of the survey, our phase 1, is to help bring clarity to a very complex topic. The results from the assessment will show you where and if there are different experiences lived out through your company or your employees. So it's really important that we are evaluating diversity metrics versus inclusion metrics, because diversity of staff does not equate to inclusion and belonging and being able to leverage that diversity. It also does not guarantee racial equity. So diversity metrics measures a balance of people in the workplace, right? Ensuring that your organization is representative of the labor force. Inclusion metrics, however, evaluate the employee's experience and compares that against the experiences of others based on their identity. So one of the top 2 reasons I recommend organizations get an assessment done is that it allows you line of where you are. Rather than making assumptions, you get an accurate perception of the current state of inclusion and belonging for your organization. It will also allow you to assess the impact of your current policies, practices, programs moving forward. The other reason why this is so valuable is that it allows you to identify opportunities for improvement. You can use the powerful analytics to see where different stakeholders in your organization are having different experiences and where you might be able to have the biggest impact. So the 7 main factors that our assessment evaluates is belonging, fairness, opportunities and resources, decision-making, diversity, sense of voice, and contribution to broader purpose. We do add in additional demographics, but the main demographics that we're looking at will be gender identity, race and ethnicity, sexual orientation, whether or not someone identifies as transgender, age, education, tenure in your organization, their caregiver status, whether or not they care for someone other than their child, their family status, their native language, physical abilities, and veteran status. The custom demographics we include are rank and role, job status, job level, political affiliation, religious affiliation, location, organization, family status, whether or not someone identifies as being mixed race. And individuals will be able to select up to 3 different race and ethnic identities, whether or not the individual is multilingual, and much more. So on the back end, when individuals complete the assessment, what I see is something akin to this. So as you can see in this example, we're able to evaluate the experiences of individuals and groups based on heat maps. In this particular example, we're looking at the experiences of teams. So you can see that the team of sales, for example, is having a significantly more difficult time in the overall organization. Each of these factors that you see to the left-hand corner have corresponding questions that are asked of the responders in the assessment. And the assessment is based on a Likert scale, and all questions are formulated in the affirmative. You can also see here that events, the team of events is having a much higher reported rate of engagement overall. What I really appreciate about this assessment is that it allows us to see where we're thriving and where we have some opportunities for improvement. And because people live intersectional lives, the assessment also allows us to see how our identities intersect and overlap to inform our experiences. So as an example here, on the left-hand side, we're evaluating and comparing the experiences of women of color in comparison to white women and men of color in comparison to white men. On the right-hand side, we're comparing gender and ability. We're comparing the experiences of individuals who identify as male not having a disability and male having a disability, and women having a disability and women stating that they do not have a disability. Again, this allows us to see any disparities in experiences based on identity. So this is our tentative schedule for our work right now. We have not officially launched the assessment. We are still in the process of the last stages of customizing that. One of the benefits of this as well, this assessment, is that it will not only give us a bird's eye view of how members of the Alliance are doing, but also each of your organizations that participate in this will be able to get a report for your own organization as well to see how you're doing. That will go to your organization directors, leadership specifically. It will not be shared with external members. So if you are with TNC, only TNC gets their report. Everyone, however, will get the overall report for the Alliance. Let's see. And so here's our timeline as it relates to the education series. So we're starting off with racial equity and environmentalism. Some of your staff may have participated in some of my workshops in the past. So we'll be going through that process again, starting in September, and then picking up again in January 2022. We will have one workshop per month, and those recordings will be available for a limited time. I believe we agreed upon 1 month from the initial airing, and then they will be removed. So if anyone from your organization is not able to attend the live workshop, they will be able to review it within a month prior to the next workshop. This is done intentionally, primarily because each of our workshops build upon the previous one. And so we don't want attendees coming to workshops when they haven't had the foundational or preliminary and prerequisite sessions yet. I won't go into each of the workshops just yet in case there's questions. So I'll come back to that in a moment. But I want to just pause here to see if there are any questions with regards to the assessment.
This is Cherie Fisher from the U.S. Forest Service. I have a wonky question.
Go ahead.
How do you maintain participants' anonymity if someone falls in a category where there are not a lot of people?
Yeah, great question. Not a wonky question at all. So we have a minimum sample size requirement. Typically that size is between 3 and 5. Also, none of the responders will be attributed to their email address. So everyone will receive the same link, the same passcode, and they can complete this on a mobile phone. They can complete it on their desktop. Either is very user-friendly. So when there is not a minimum demographic that is met, we will see that, for example, we have 2 Southeast Asian individuals who filled out the survey, but we won't be able to see their responses.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. There will also be a survey frequently asked questions document that will be shared with all leaders to help answer any questions that your staff may have as well. Any other questions?
I guess this is Jim Jarrett. I got a question for you. Is the idea of the survey to survey all of the individuals from all of our Chicago Wilderness partners? We've got whatever 200 or so. The people that are engaged with Chicago Wilderness. So, for example, I work for a company that's got 3,000 employees. Is the intent that the survey would be trying to survey we who are engaged in Chicago Wilderness? So if there's maybe 2 or 3 people from my organization that typically engage with that, is that the focus? Or is the intent to kind of have us as the leaders take it back to our full organization and make the offering to 100 people or 200 people or 2,000?
Yeah, So it's the latter. We want to get an assessment of all organizations that have either been affiliated with Chicago Wilderness Alliance or should be affiliated with Chicago Wilderness Alliance. The questionnaire will ask whether or not individuals are actively participating with the Alliance or not. So we'll be able to decipher those individuals and their responses. Also, we want as many people as possible in your organization to complete the assessment so that your data is more useful to you. So we can accommodate thousands and thousands of participants in this assessment. And we've done this with as little as, I believe, 17 people, and with as many as over 4,000. I anticipate that we will have more than 4,000. I hope we will have more than 4,000 for this particular assessment.
Hi, this is Greg Mueller. I've got a question, and it's kind of maybe a question or a request for. I'm assuming there's going to be a communication piece that goes with this. I'm just thinking that, most of our organizations have our own questionnaires that are going on, and have, at the Big Botanic Garden, we have our own consultant. We're working on this. We have this, so it's going to be interesting to see how we bring in another questionnaire, how that interfaces with what else is going on and how we get buy-in. So I was just wondering how that communication piece is going to be packaged to get buy-in and participation.
Absolutely. So there will be a communications draft provided to all leaders, one for yourselves, and then also one that can be shared with your organization that would be a template that you can customize to your own verbiage, your own cadence, to share out with your individual staff members. Now, in terms of the work that you're doing already in your organizations, we do encourage everyone to participate in this particular assessment to help us get a concrete view of where we are as a collective. And then hopefully in a few years, we reassess ourselves after we've completed the education series to see, have we made progress? Thanks for the question. This hasn't been asked yet, but this assessment should take anywhere from 7 to 15 minutes for your staff time, just in case that's a concern as well. Any other questions?
Incorrect, August. Thank you so much. That was great. And I really appreciate the questions. Also, the survey they can't stop and come back because we're not identifying it with any, email or anything else like that. So once you start, you need to finish.
Yeah.
But it is very user-friendly. And I thought it was very well done. I also want to give a shout out. August did an excellent job in leading the working group that collaborated and really helped to ensure the types of questions, how to work with all of this. I mean, just really thoughtful, and it was just a great group to work with to get us to where we are today.
Any more questions before? And please, friends, don't feel like this is your last time to be able to connect with me. You have my contact information. Once you are able to review the communications templates, as well as the survey frequently asked questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me or even directly to Laura or Elizabeth with any questions that you might have or concerns. I'm more than happy to support to make sure that we all are able to get our organizations participated in the assessment.
So maybe this is a question for you, Elizabeth or August. When we get this started, is there going to be like a introductory letter reaching out to the partners that say, hey, we're going to be doing this. If you're interested, okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. We want this to be as painless as possible for the partners, which is why we'll offer you a template letter that you can basically just populate your name, your signature in, or put on your letterhead and share out to your organizations. You're also welcome to utilize your own, but we definitely wanted to not put additional work on your plates. So yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
The other thing, and the letter will explain it, and when you do the survey, there is a place for the partners. Every partner has been listed, and so you'll want to ensure in your teams that they select your organization so that you can get your data. But because of all the demographics and things, this is from a collective, really is the value and helping us ensure this is aligning with our green vision and ensuring that we are broadening and just how we are working and increasing participation in the core of why this is so important. It's really understand all of our members and those that have been engaged here and have continued to be engaged. That's wonderful and that's awesome. But, you know, really looking forward to knowing those that have not been, how can we ensure that they can join us and feel comfortable, and how can we retain those that may have left us and you know, get those questions answered. So again, very exciting. I just think this is going to be absolutely wonderful. And I don't know if it's been done on this large of a scale before. So August, thank you for pioneering this with us.
Thank you for allowing me to lead it. I'm really excited. Obviously, you know, we all have a vested interest in ensuring that our public lands, our waters, you know, our wildlife is protected for generations to come. And that is going to require that we have all hands on deck. So yeah, I'm just really grateful to be a part of this and really excited to see what information we get. For those of you who have not yet been able to begin this journey with your organization and are worried that your staff will ask, well, what next? This is what's next. We then take that assessment and then go forward with establishing that shared language and understanding with our education series. So, but that will also be outlined in the communications letters as well.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, August. Again, appreciate that. And of course, any questions, anyone can ask at any time and we'll get those answers for you. And these workshops too that are going to be up and coming are open. So this is just great added value for being a part of the alliance of all these resources that we make available to all of our organizations. So great. All right. Thank you so much. My next great opportunity here is to introduce Jim Anderson, who's going to update you with our strategic planning with ICL. Take it away, Jim.
Great, thanks, Elizabeth. So today what we'd like to do is just update you where we're at with this process. And as many of you may know or may not know, we engaged the Institute for Conservation Leadership to kind of guide us through some strategic thinking and talking about how we work together as different groups. You know, we're a big alliance, we're completely different, as August was saying. We have different points of view coming together. And so we really felt it was necessary to think about how we come together and have a good statement. And, you know, we've also had some great help from Elizabeth and Laura pulling our thoughts together into this wonderful display that's in front of you. And I think it really starts to formalize where we're headed. You can see all the different goals are in there, people are in there, the hub is overlying it, and we're talking about increasing access, taking climate action, protecting healthy water, adding conservation lands, green infrastructure, agriculture, and of course, one of my favorites, managing those lands. And one of the things that we talked about with this process was that we need to engage our partners and members early and often. We also need you to think about participating in intensive small groups to do some of the work. And then even then, in between those sessions where we meet in person, we like to have you thinking about doing some work in between. So actually it's called Chicago Wilderness Homework. And so we are trying to focus all of this on sort of a schematic that drives where we're going and why we're doing what we're doing, where we want to do it. We'll have a discussion about the where today. Who's going to do what is something that we're working with the 7 goals on. And those 7 goals, once they get laid out, are really going to start to function on more of how we implement those. But we also have in front of you information about, sort of the oversight. So you can see yourself today, the executive council is under the House section. The steering committee, corporate council, the Green Vision collective goal team and working groups are all working together to feed through this process. And so we've had a couple of workshops with some of you. And the last workshop, we sort of asked these questions, ICL did. And so, some of these things are really great things to hear, where, what do you want to learn, solve, try on during these training sessions? So certainly engagement came up to be a top thing. Working together was also a great thing. And so we know that partnerships are really important, and we want to increase our partnership out there. So we want to find where there's new partnerships and who are the good partners to work with so that we can have them on our team. It's like picking Charles Barkley to be on your team, or the person that won the NBA last night is also a good person. So next slide. So there was a lot of other ideas that were added, and we're thinking about, communication, taking Chicago Wilderness to the next level. What is that next level? Certainly engaging people with low capacity, aligning ourselves. That's a big factor of what we call the network mindset. We also are very interested in how other people view Chicago Wilderness, and where we're going and how we're working. And the internal steering committee and some of the goal teams are certainly wanting to think about, well, how do we make sure that we're doing that? So we're looking at not only goals, but metrics. And we also want everybody that's a member or a partner to honor the process and the product. So once we get to a point where we say, hey, this is what we want to work on and where we want to work on it, that's where we need to come to an agreement and build this long-term commitment to move things forward. So, but we're also very interested in how you fit in and where do you contribute and how do you feel is your best point. So if I could have the next slide. And so one of the things that the ICL presented to us was some ways to think about what are we doing. And so one process, the purpose, people, process is that's the 3 Ps. So our purpose is to ground our vision and our direction that keeps our work on course. We want to be able to say, this is our vision, this is what we're doing. And if something comes in from far left, we might consider it, but here, it doesn't fit what we're trying to do. And then there's the people part. Who and why are they participating in the network? And we want to develop trust. So one of the things that we keep hearing from the steering committee is we need to communicate out what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what we're finding out. So today is part of that process. And so the last part is process, how to best organize ways to stay connected, act and influence what is important, and make the decisions. And then another process they showed was the connection, alignment, and production. And I've been talking about that a little bit here. We want to form links between people and entities. We want to emphasize sharing information and knowledge. And we deeply want to improve our communication so that we can create that alignment. We can have this collective value and shared reasons for being together as part of the alignment. And we want that shared set of ideas, language, standards, and identity. And your participation helps drive that alignment. And then when we get to the production phase, we're looking to implement things through joint action, and that we involve all the network or subgroups that are in there. All these 7 goals that we're talking about, we keep finding out, everybody keeps saying they're interrelated, they they influence each other, and so we want to keep that concept going. So once we get that alignment, that has to be kept in the production. And we're doing things that we can't do by ourselves. So each agency has the ability to do certain things, but together we can do better things. And when we're thinking about that, we need to be thinking about the structure and capacity for planning, managing, and making sure our agreements are clear. So if we can have the next slide, please. So there's also something that they talked about is the give and get ratio. So there's a shared, and it's just kind of repeat, but you give what you get. And so we want to have shared outcomes under that, new improved capacity, new enhanced resources, efficiency, positive publicity, and then we're drumming up new leaders and folks. So this is kind of that sheet in on that information. If we go back one slide, please. So this was some of the information that we also gathered. I'm sorry, I was a little bit out of order there. And so, the responses that we got back about the network and the purpose, people, and process was that Chicago is present and it's evolving. It's been in existence for many years. We're relevant. We noticed that we need metrics. We certainly want to be inclusive and equitable. We want to reach down to that young, new emerging professionals. And we understand that CW, in order to evolve, must include everybody. And we need to have this continued engagement. That's that communication. And we also want to be able to think about how we can be advocates for what we do. Okay, next slide, and then the next one. Let's go to the next one. So this was the comments on the give and get. So again, it's kind of repeating a lot of things here, you can see. And so we're kind of repeating these because these are really important for us to move forward. It's a common baseline for understanding. The get is best achieved through consensus on projects. It helps us structure goal team meetings. Some organizations could be very small and yet they have a lot to give, and we need to recognize that. We certainly want to be able, by giving a lot, increase our visibility. We want to be able to show that we have a lot of reference and relevance in the region. And if we're focused and we are clear, when new people come in, it makes them easier to onboard. And people talk about workshops, that makes them feel better. I think the Zoom thing has really made things a lot more accessible, which is great. And that talks about the last item here, that we get more opportunities for being transparent and accomplishing our goals. So if we can have the next slide, please. So, Diane Russell and Peter Lane, the ICL staff, have introduced us to a bunch of interesting data gathering things that are become common on Zoom now. This is Mentimeter. And so this is just talking about what is the most useful for your work in Chicago Wilderness. And certainly, fortunately for us, the first thing that came up was the connection, alignment, and production. But they all were very interesting things that we got. So these are all important factors, and we like the results of this slide. And then I believe the next slide is the final one. And it's really good. The steering committee and the goal leaders are hearing information from people who are participating, that they really want to be connected with us. And so, the fact that we got to know and learn from other Chicago's wilderness leaders was the big bar on the lower part is really helpful to us, that we're doing the correct process here. And I believe that's the last slide, and then we're going to talk about the next step. If there's any questions, we could take them, I guess, really quick. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Jim, thank you. And such a great process. And again, just to shout out that everybody that's been participating in these sessions and the work that's going on with each of the goals is very exciting. And it is beginning to take shape, but it's iterative. And as we continue to move forward, I know there's a lot of great work on the hub work that's going to help tie this all together. We also then are fostering the leads on the individual goals to collaborate and come together so that we're cross-pollinating. And again, that invitation on those opportunities, there's always an open invite to anyone that wants to get involved in a group, and everything's moving at a different pace, but just a very exciting process. And so if you're not familiar with the Green Goals, I also just wanted to share out that Laura has put out on the website, again, the goals and some background too, so you can log on to that and see where we're at on that. So I think we have a presentation next, am I correct, here on how the Green Vision connects with some work out of Washington under America the Beautiful and the 30 by 30.
Laura, you may need to click share sound from computer. Maybe.
We can't hear you, Jen.
You'll be having in a few minutes. And I'm really glad I can share at least a few recorded thoughts with you going into it. It's an important conversation you're going to have about something that I think is a potential.
Laura, we can hear now but can't see.
Concept for Chicago wilderness called 30 by 30. You've probably heard of it, at least many of you. For those of you who haven't, I'll just summarize what it's about. It's a global initiative to protect 30% of the world's lands and waters by 2030. And the unfortunate circumstances behind this effort are ones we're all familiar with. Massive ecosystem degradation continues across the planet. Extinction rates are 1,000 times background levels. Climate change is accelerating at a pace that's surprising even many climate scientists. And so I won't belabor this, but we are in a moment of global crisis. And world leaders will meet later this year to set new global biodiversity targets. 30 by 30 will probably be one of these important targets. This is a high-profile global initiative. But stepping it down to the United States, the Biden administration, through the National Climate Task Force, has established its own 30 by 30 set of recommendations, released just a few months ago. It's called Conserving and Restoring America the Beautiful. And the challenge it sets out is to conserve at least 30% of our lands and waters by 2013. So it mirrors the global effort. But it uses the word conserve, not protect, but conserve. And that's kind of important. That word includes, but goes beyond the traditional protection done through land acquisition and easements. It reaches out to all Americans who own or manage land. Recognizing the importance and value of private conservation efforts of farmers, of ranchers, of private forest owners, of corporations, ultimately every landowner. And it offers support and recognition for their voluntary efforts to do the right thing by the land. Even though it's a national framework, it's driven at the local level. What it is it's a call to action to pursue a locally led but nationally scaled effort to conserve, to connect, to restore lands, waters, and wildlife that we all depend on. Now, this presents what I think are important opportunities for Chicago Wilderness as one of these locally led conservation efforts. We're being asked to step up here, and I think the stage is nicely set for us. Throughout our history, Chicago Wilderness has nested its work within larger scale problems and opportunities. In fact, the very notion of Chicago Wilderness came out of the global biodiversity crisis conversations of 30 years ago, as we realized that our own lands and waters here were not in good health. We had what we realized was our own local biodiversity crisis. And that led to the development of our own biodiversity recovery plan and the green infrastructure vision. Both of these became part of the foundation for CMAP's first comprehensive regional land use and transportation plan. It was called Go to 2040. But it also led to a lot of stepped up management of our own lands and waters here to big effect. So then after that, as global climate change came into increasing focus, we responded with our own climate action plan for nature. And now we have this next big opportunity to plug into this newest effort to conserve our planet and our region and connect people to nature in some fundamental ways. And I think this is a challenge we should take on. Yes, we've already done a lot of the foundational work through the development of our goals. You think of it, each of our 7 goals, managing healthy landscapes, conservation agriculture, adding to our conservation land base, access to nature for all people, climate action, green infrastructure, and healthy water, all of them relate to the goals of 30 by 30. As we refine our goals further, our challenge then is to make sure they align with 30 by 30. And then it becomes a nexus for how all of our goals come together. It makes our work immediately relevant in the context of this current 30 by 30 initiative. It makes it easy to communicate, and I think it makes it overall more compelling. So there are going to be a lot of questions to answer as we think beyond simple protection to this much broader suite of conservation actions in the 30 by 30 context. For instance, what's that mix of public and private conservation that gets us to 30% of our area conserved? What counts? What are we going to evaluate and count? What kinds of actions should be considered on ag land, on forest preserve land, on corporate land, on residential backyards? How does watershed management fit in? How do we retool and use existing efforts like the Chicago Region Trees Initiative and the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan? How do we use 30 by 30 to set measurable targets for our goals? How do we make sure everyone benefits through equal access to nature? How we answer these questions here will not only guide our work, but could create a template for urban areas elsewhere, as well as inform the national 30 by 30 effort. This would build on the Chicago Wilderness legacy of serving as a national and even a global model for urban biodiversity conservation. So the state of Illinois and Illinois DNR will likely have a formal statewide role in 30 by 30 soon. The General Assembly passed a bill in the spring session, and it directed the formation of a 30 by 30 conservation task force. If the bill is signed by Governor Pritzker, IDNR will lead this task force in conducting listening sessions around the state during the next 6 to 12 months or so. And from these sessions, we should have a wide range of ideas and strategies for how we should go about conserving and protecting 30% of the state's lands and waters by 2030. So I'll wrap up just by saying that this national 30 by 30 initiative is grounded in a collaborative and inclusive approach to conservation, one that has as much focus on human welfare as on land health. And this aligns perfectly with where we are headed with our green vision. I hope you all have an inspired conversation about 30 by 30 today, and I very much look forward to working with you all on this effort going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jen.
And so I'm Amy Rosenthal from the Field Museum, and I am following up John's incredible, I think, passionate and remarkable points that he's made about 30 by 30 and also Conserving America the Beautiful, which is the first we've seen from the national administration on what their goals are. But it is not just at the national level, as John indicated, that these conversations are coming up and that our members are involved and in fact leading in many ways. Just a few examples, the Nature Conservancy has put out some of the most important considerations we should be taking into account as we consider taking up 30 by 30 goals. Open Lands has done an assessment about what would that look like for Illinois in particular, but what does 30% mean? Some of the questions that John Brogner asked. And the Illinois Environmental Council has been facilitating a group that overlaps with many of the members here today to think about what should our efforts look like and how do they appropriately apply to something, a place like the Chicago Wilderness region that goes from urban centers to rural working lands. And I think these conversations are replicated in each of the states that Chicago Wilderness covers. Because we work together and we work together around these shared goals, I think, as John said, we do have something special to say about this metropolitan region, but also about how the work we do and the things we are aiming for are central to those national and global goals and discussions. And we can take and together take innovative and inclusive approaches. So what we're asking from you right now is how do you envision 30 by 30 enhancing Chicago Wilderness and your role in the Alliance? And what I've just shared in the chat is a Jamboard where we're hoping to capture some of your comments and reflections on that point. We're asking it not just for idle reflection, but for action moving forward. In fact, this afternoon, there's a joint meeting of the steering committee of Chicago Wilderness, along with the goal team leads for each of those goals that you've seen from Jim, from Elizabeth, from John now, to talk about this in particular. And we want to make sure that your comments and your thoughts, the Executive Council's best thinking is represented as that next conversation happens. I'm hoping that folks are able to get into the Jamboard. I think Laura is going to help me to share some of the resources I mentioned from the Nature Conservancy and Open Lands so far. But at this time, we have a few minutes and I want to welcome folks to share their comments and initial thoughts with the group as well. And perhaps, Elizabeth, you can tell us about how many minutes we should be using before moving on to the next topic for today.
I think this is really important and an opportunity to engage. So we're just about almost at the half hour. What if we give, let's aim for maybe the next 5 minutes if that's good, just for reflection, and we'll see where we're at. Okay, so.
That sounds great. I can see comments coming in, and those are really helpful. They're going to be important in the next steps. I know for some folks, I just had one of the leaders at my own organization ended up deleting my entire Jamboard on another topic rather than being able to post. So if you prefer to share in the chat here on Zoom or just to unmute, please do so. We're welcoming comments.
Okay, Wayne Schimpf here. I chair the Conservation Committee that oversees the conservation programming for 10,000 Boy Scouts and about 3,500 adult leaders. And we have through pilot programs and that, in addition to the scouts going out and do their outing part of scouting in nature, relating subject knowledge and volunteer skills in that they're also students in school and students at faith-based institutions. So through working with the scouting activities with intelligent planning and so on, they can become awful big habitat or sustainable influencers. And so what I'd like to do is to see a task force of those members of CW that have teen-based programs like Brookfield Zoo and Susie up in Lake Forest Open Lands to get together to look at the activities they're doing, not just doing it for the student, their target groups, but also so they become environmental influencers in their school and in their faith-based institutions. And I think that through critical activities that have multiple impacts, that we can begin to move to attain the 30-30 in the UN agenda that was just written about in Jerry Edelman's Open Lander and that, and so on. So that there's a mighty youth task force that they're more interested in the action. The adults are interested in all this word game and wordsmithing and goals in that, but the kids want to know what they can do for their next soil and water conservation merit badge activity that will have the greatest impact. And so I think that somehow we have to immediately get together and develop an action plan that the programs, when they start up in September, we'd be ready to give them some tips and tricks on how to, whatever they do, have the biggest impact to achieve the goals of CW.
Wayne, thank you so much for that comment. In addition to my notes that I've taken here, I want to recommend to you, if you haven't already, we have an incredible CW Environmental Education Committee that you may want to participate in. And then we have our Goal 5 team that does include environmental programming and particularly, and also programming in natural areas under its consideration. And so we would welcome your participation in both of those working groups if you're interested.
Yes, I am. But I wear so many hats and everything that I just, well, I have lost track in that, but the Goal 5 and the environmental ed have been involved with the environmental ed process in the past and with Susan Ask on the climate and stuff like that.
Wonderful. Well, we'll get you synced up on that. And I also want to welcome other questions and comments during our few minutes we have remaining. I can see things coming in the chat, the connections from Casey Sullivan, the connections between 30 by 30 and a 50% goal for protecting ecosystems and biodiversity on the planet that comes half Earth from Ed Wilson. I can see that Michelle Carr has shared the insights and perspectives from the Nature Conservancy on 30 by 30. And then I can also see, incredibly, in the Jamboard, we have a lot of ideas and reflections, opportunities to restore, to be ambitious, to expand membership, to align work plans across the Alliance, to accelerate our impact, working together on a regional scale, consider how we can make our maximum contribution to these goals. If I see Susan's hand, I'm wondering if she wants to say something. Susan, ask.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just I think this is such a great opportunity, and I think we can really show the value of urban and suburban conservation regions. And just hope we'll all be as ambitious as we can. I've heard in some discussions, oh, we'll never make anywhere near 30% in Illinois. And we can. We can do an awful lot, as we've shown in the Chicago Wilderness area. And so I want to remind us not to shift all of this burden onto Montana, but to take up our part of the work here.
Well said. So please keep including as ideas come to you. We'll be having our next conversation, not our last, but another one of these openers in the afternoon, I think around 2 p.m. today. So if you think of something after you've closed the Jamboard, we'll make sure that link goes out to the group and you can reopen and also share your thoughts by email or by connecting to the goal team that you're participating in. And now I will turn it back over to Elizabeth. Thank you all so much for the time.
Thank you, Amy. Great job. Appreciate the facilitation and connecting this together, as well as everybody on the Jamboard. We'll keep that going while we continue our meeting. And then we're going to move now to the next item on the agenda, which is a discussion on the draft budget. So our treasurer, Mike Lister, is not with us today, but Jim Jarzal is going to take the lead here to run us through this process.
I apologize. Give me a second while I pull up the next slide.
Okay, great. Thanks, Elizabeth. And I had to move to my cell phone, so hopefully you're hearing me okay. Is that good?
You're good. You're good.
Okay, great. I had to do that high-tech juggling that we're all used to. I think working at home now. So I'll just kind of get us started as we pull up the slides. But basically, just to get everyone grounded a little bit, the steering committee has put together a draft budget for the 2022 draft plan year. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to review with you high level of some of our thinking and what we put into this draft budget. And we will be asking for approval of this draft budget. The actual budget won't be approved until later on in this year, I think. Isn't that right, Elizabeth? In October, I think, is when we do that.
That is correct, October meeting.
Okay, so this is really for more awareness. It's for getting some feedback. It's for, all that to make sure that we're transparent with what we're doing with respect to the budget. And I'm not seeing it displaying yet. Is that right, or is it displayed?
It is not.
Okay. So I'll just kind of talk as we kind of get that pulled up. But bottom line, what we did is we took last year's budget, the 21 budget, which was our COVID, essentially our COVID budget. And we basically kept things more or less consistent. Okay, there you go. And what we did is we assumed that there would be a little bit of growth. So you can see at the top, we've got the revenue associated with, you can see last year, 2021, and now 2022. So we're showing a slight increase, a little bit of growth, not huge. You will also notice that grants line, there's a $36,000 number in there for grants. And I'll get to that when we get down a little bit further, but that is essentially an award that we're working with IDNR on and it's not yet been technically awarded, but we believe it's going to be, and that's a plug for that right there. And you can see the program budget as well, which I'll talk about in a second. So bottom line, the operational budget is essentially the revenue is $197,000. And then we have investments that we're taking out of our own bank account. This would be the money that we have in reserves to the tune of $90,000 to total the budget at $287,997. And then you can see the major expenditures. We have our normal charge for the fiscal sponsor, Friends of the Forest Preserve, insurance, just basically running the operations, the technology, the portal, etc. You can see we've got the coordinator, so Laura's in there. And you can see program money. That's a big jump from last year, and I'll talk about that in a second. We've got marketing communications. So basically, it's
more or less a balanced budget. We're a little bit surplus, but it's basically a balanced budget. And if you flip to the next slide, and actually, I think if you go down 2, I think these are reversed. So if you go to the next slide, it really starts with the revenue one. Whoops, go back up. Yeah, it's the revenue. Sorry, it's tiny on the screen. That's it. You're in the right one. Okay. So this is the budget. Basically, you can see at the top, these are the revenues coming in. This would be, basically membership dues. So that's 110,000, a little bit of donation. And then there's that 36,000 from the IDNR grant request. The grant request is a $75,000 grant request. And it basically spans effectively, if awarded, which we anticipate being awarded now until through next year's budget and then part of the following budget. So we've got it kind of parsed out. We'll actually see some impact on this year's budget, which would be covering some of the JEDI costs and some other things that we're doing. This would be the portion that would apply to the next year's budget. And then there'll be a tail that will apply to the following budget year. So 36,000 is what we anticipate in the 2022 budget cycle. And if we move down programs, this next group of costs you see here, we have $50,000 associated with revenues associated with Congress. Now, we have not talked about Congress in great detail, but what we've decided to do as a steering committee is put a plug in the budget for a Congress. And I say a Congress, and I'm kind of using air quotes here, because I think we want to determine what kind of a vision we might have for Congress. I think the steering committee's opinion is it probably doesn't look like what we've done in the past, where we all kind of go down and we have a big event and we're all there at one time. This might be a bit of a disaggregated kind of Congress, maybe over a period of time with a capstone event at the end. But we really want to get more input from folks, talk to more leaders, and really think through this. So for the purposes of just the budgeting, we put a plug in there for $50,000. You can see the excellence in ecological restoration. We don't have any money for that because we're not doing anything in that this year. And force of nature, same thing. So you basically can see the $50,000 as the revenues for that event. That would be, sponsorships, etc. And that takes you down to your total revenue. And then you get to the expenses portion where you can see the normal expenses that we have for our sponsorship. I talked about insurance again. And then as we're running through this, a whole bunch of operational expenses that we have totaling $18,000. And then you see the Alliance Coordinator. We've got that in there with a little bit of a raise for her this year from last. Thank you, Laura. We have $50,000 in here for, again, the Congress, which would be just netting out the, we have up the revenues coming in on the front side, and we have the expenses coming in here. So that's just netting that out to 50,000. Let's go on down to, we got 0 for the excellence in the ecological and force of nature. But in the program funding section, this is an area where the steering committee is proposing to add some additional money. $25,000 for program grants. That would be grants that would be able to be used by the different working groups and teams of Chicago Wilderness. We do recognize we want to put the kind of the rules around how we're going to do that and how we want to make those available and do it in an equitable way. So that'll be coming, but we wanted to put a plug out there for $25,000 for us as members to be able to use. You see $25,000 earmarked for the hub. So we feel that, having the hub up and running is an important part. So we have $25,000 associated with that. There's the JEDI work that will be, continuing on from this year into next year. So you see that plug for $26,000. And some other funds there. So basically $86,000 total. So that's new. That's got some extra funds that we put in there for us to be able to use and implement some of the really important things that we've been talking about, some things we talked about even today. The rest of the budget you see is pretty much straightforward. There's some a little bit for supplies. We have marketing communication efforts that we use someone to help us do that with. And then we have a little bit of, advertising, marketing, that kind of material. So that basically gets us to the final budget cost there. So I'll pause there for a second. I would welcome just a couple comments and thoughts. One, any concerns, questions, or issues with putting a plug-in for the Congress at $50,000, knowing that we want to kind of imagine what this is going to look like if we have it, and if we do have it, how that might roll out. But any questions, concerns about that? That was one element that we talked about. And then the other was these additional fundings that we included for programs. And again, a little bit, we'll have to put some architecture around how to access that. But any feedback on any of that, that would be helpful for us as steering committee.
Hey, Jim, this is Jack.
Hey, Jack.
I agree on the plug for the Congress. I'm curious if things didn't pan out for the Congress, what might be a good use of that funding? Is that something that you're considering too? Because that might be worthwhile thinking about what the backup plan might be for that use of that funding.
Yeah, so one way to think about this, Jack, is we are pulling forward from our reserves. This budget has us pulling forward $90,000. So we can do a couple things. If we don't use the $50,000, let's say, if we're not going to expend that in this 2022 budget, we can just keep it in the bank, right? We can keep it there. So there's no requirement to expend that amount. I think if we do Congress, obviously we're going to have costs. If we don't do Congress, we can just keep it in the bank, and then we can, of course, either amend this budget and use it some other way, or we can keep it for next year's budget. But it is clear, one of the important things to note is that we are pulling money out of a reserve. So, we've heard that. I think we all recognize that we're sitting pretty well with financial reserves, and we should leverage those. Let's use them, and let's especially use them when we need to use them. And I think this is an important year for us to do that.
And I would jump in, Jim, on that too. I think that's great, Jack. Thanks. And if there is an initiative or something to which there's an idea for an investment that we haven't identified, those should come forward and then allow that to be discussed. That's what this is all about. It's a shared resources to move our vision forward as an alliance.
So Jim, sorry, Michelle. Jim, there's a question in the chat about the money set aside for the hub, and would that include time for staff? Or I don't think the steering committee really feathered that out yet, but can you answer that question?
Yeah, no, thanks, Jim. And sorry, because I'm using my cell phone, I can't really.
Right. I was helping you out.
I really appreciate that. No, I think you're right, Jim. We recognize as a steering committee that the hub is at the center of, a bunch of this activity that we got going on with the 7 goals and keeping that all wired together. And so we really did just put a plug in there for that amount. It was not, it's not an itemized list. We didn't look at, what the needs were and then lined it up. We just put a placeholder in there. Personally, I don't see why it would not be able to cover time for people to work on that project. We just haven't fleshed it out. So it truly is just a placeholder.
There's one more question from Susan Ask. It's the line item for facilitated meetings. Is that for ICL, or is that funding available for meetings related to the goals? And if you want to bring in a facilitator, it is actually the latter, Susan. That's sort of like the team program funding, just to be able to allow the teams to be able to determine how they can best serve their needs.
I believe Michelle had a question too.
Hi, Jim, thanks for the good presentation, and pardon my gravelly voice. I've managed to catch something. Can you speak a little bit to the health of the reserves. And we're talking about the income statement here. And I'm curious, you know, we are projecting, drawing the reserves, and how are we just sort of thinking about sustainability?
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's good. That's a good question, Michelle. And we have, and I think if you go down one slide, I think we had, is there another slide there? Yeah, there you go. So, you know, this is showing, you know, what we've been basically amassing, right? And we did look at, and consciously look at last year's budget, and have been looking at the membership dues coming in, especially in light of COVID. And we feel like it's lining up quite well. We feel like last year's budget really did come in, and the revenues that were anticipated are coming in, you know, pretty well on target from what we were hoping for. And so looking at last year and taking this year, kind of keeping it pretty much flat, we feel like we're pretty healthy. We feel like we've got a pretty good foundation. The revenues coming in are meeting our expectations. So we have the ability to dip into our reserve. So I think with that all said, we're feeling pretty confident that we've got more than I think 2 years of revenues available for us to kind of carry us if we need. And the time is now to use those funds. So I think we don't want to be sitting on a big fat bank account. We want to put the money to use. But I think it does balance it nicely, and we seem to be in a pretty strong position right now. Okay, great, thanks. Any other comments, questions? Because otherwise, Elizabeth, do we need to take a vote, or is this just more just a awareness kind of thing?
We'll do the vote in October. This was just presenting the draft.
Okay, very good. And we, of course, we welcome any comments, thoughts, digest it, send us information. We'd love to do that. And clearly the discussion on the Congress will be ongoing, and we'll share more as we start imagining that further. Thank you, everyone.
So Elizabeth and Laura, on the agenda, we do say move to accept the draft as presented. So.
Okay,
So,
yeah, sorry, then let's.
Yeah, so I'll make that motion
Okay,
to accept the draft as
thank you.
presented.
Anyone want to second that?
I'll second it.
Who was that seconded?
Wayne Schimpf.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. Okay, any all ayes say yes?
Aye. Aye.
Yeah.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Any noes? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Now we're going to advance to the discussion of goal number 4 and the Chicago Wilderness Boundary Map. I'm going to turn it over to Ben Haberther from Kane County Forest Preserve District. And Kathy Garrity. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, hi. Wasn't totally sure I was speaking, but happy to talk about this as it's something we've been working on for the last few months. You'll see 3 maps up there right now. Kind of the one to focus on is on the right, which has the overlap. Green is how we've mapped Chicago Wilderness, the 7.7 million acre area. And Jim could speak to how long that's been, but it's been quite a while now that's been the accepted boundaries of Chicago Wilderness. When we started with the Goal 4 team to measure kind of on these 30 by 30 goals that we were talking about, what it would take to get, you know, approximately another 200,000 acres of land into conservation, or total 200,000 acres in the CW area, what would that look like? We wanted to make sure we were measuring accurately. So that's where this came from. And I think this group saw our appeal to hire Dave Holman to do some mapping. So while we were working with Dave and the GIS Hub group, the question came up specifically in two areas where if you kind of look in the western side of Walworth County on the original green map, and then the real smooth curvilinear feature in the Grand Kankakee Marsh historic area. We got a little history on why that was. Some of it was just a political a no for Rock County west of Walworth when we made those boundaries. And then the other one was just a decision to make a smooth line. The new boundary that we're proposing is just under 8 million acres at 7.97 million acres. And it's all based on sub-watersheds. So it's a consistent methodology across the whole area. And if we had to make a question to include or exclude an area or specific conservation area, we erred to the side of including that into the boundary. So you'll notice there's a little bit of a net gain. When we're looking at what does this mean for mapped conservation areas within Chicago Wilderness, there's a little bit of an increase. You know, there hasn't been a surge in land protection. It's just been, we're picking up a little bit more acres, but there was no effort to include or no motivation to include a big area, but rather to have a consistent methodology across the whole area. So it's now watershed based. It's a simple explanation, and there's no exceptions in there. And Kathy, please pop in if I forgot anything.
That was perfect. Thanks, Ben. Okay, and so we are looking for a motion to approve this new boundary.
I will second.
Great.
Just for clarification, everyone, you know, we see that this map is focused on the terrestrial and not looking at Lake Michigan. When we did the Chicago Wilderness boundaries a long time ago, we decided not to draw a line out in the middle of Lake Michigan to include it. But by reference, the big water body that is adjacent to Chicago Wilderness, we agreed to include that as an assumed inclusion into the Chicago Wilderness region. So Lake Michigan is by default included in this, if anybody has that question.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any other questions?
So team lead, so we are actually with this boundary, we are looking for an actual action today. That is your request, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So are you going to move that?
We already did.
You did? Okay. Sorry, I missed that here. So in and off. So then we just need a vote on that, correct? Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor with the proposed change in the Chicago Wilderness boundary, motion by saying aye.
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 And those opposed, nay. All right, we have a new boundary approved. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Ben and Kathy, for your work.
Thank you.
Okay, this moves us then to the nominations and recruitment and to Daniel and Linda. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hello, everybody. I'm Daniel Suarez. I'm on the Chicago Wilderness Steering Committee. And as last year went, Linda Lancaster and I both chaired the nominations committee for the steering committee. And I think everyone here is pretty familiar with the expansion of the steering committee over the last couple of years and our effort to have the steering committee represent both the geographic and the human diversity of Chicago Wilderness. And so this year, we'll be having, I believe, 2 vacancies on the steering committee that we'll be looking to fill. We had a really great, impressive slate of candidates last year. And as part of the process, for those that were not selected to participate on the steering committee, we said we would reach back out to them during the next round of nominations and confirm that they still had interest in serving. We will also be accepting nominations at large from Chicago Wilderness members. And the way that we've done that in the past, and I assume we'll be doing it this time, is by creating a Google form that interested parties can either fill out for themselves or for someone that they would like to nominate. Ideally, you would have a conversation with that person before they're nominated, and you're sure that they want to participate. And then we're going to try to be very intentional. Last year, I think we employed some really good kind of processes for handling the nominations that I would like to see us kind of improve on this year. What we did last year was we got the nominations, we created a spreadsheet with everyone listed on there, and then we tried having individual one-on-one conversations with those people. In some cases, there are folks that, some of the nominations are folks that have been around with Chicago Wilderness for a long time. In other situations, it's brand new members who are eager to throw their hats in the ring. And we want to make sure that folks understand what they're committing to, understand what's expected of them, and to really develop as much of a unique, diverse, excited core of steering committee members. So Linda Lancaster and I will head this process up again this year. Stay tuned for more information on the nomination form. But if you have any questions in the interim, feel free to direct them to me or to Linda or both of us. And you should look out for that coming soon. I don't know if anyone has questions, but I'm happy to answer.
Hey, Daniel, it's Michelle. I have a question for you. And it might be kind of hard to answer, so I'm just sort of like putting it out as a statement. You know, I'm so inspired by Cream City and the JEDI work that we're embarking on, and some of the conversations that have gone on in the specific goal groups about bringing more diverse voices. And I guess I just want to put it out there that I think we're all for making more diversity on the steering committee. And so I guess I just want to put out there, if there were a way, as we think about this process, for all of us to take it as our collective sort of responsibility to try to think about how we might attract those candidates and how it would be worth their while to be part of this. It's really important to me.
Yeah, that's a great point, Michelle. I would also love to find ways to work with Cream City on this as well. I think as a steering committee, we've had conversations on this in the past about not only being able to recruit diverse members, but really creating a welcoming, open environment for them to come into Chicago Wilderness. And getting them in the, not just getting them in the door. Oh, I'm sorry, I froze up. I see I'm a little bit unstable here. No, I was just saying that I think in the past we've seen with Chicago Wilderness in our recent history that we probably have some more work to do in terms of creating that environment. And I think the first step in that is to have our membership fluent in the language of equity, diversity, and inclusion and what that means. And so that's the very first step, I think, in this process, is to have buy-in and support from all of our members, which will help in creating that welcoming, nurturing environment. But if there's ways that we can incorporate the nomination process, maybe we can have a review of our current processes with Cream City, and then see if there's some tweaks we can make to that. That would be, I think that'd be great.
Great, thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Michelle, on that front. I think the is there a microphone?
Everybody's name is.
Actually, you may want to put yourself on mute.
But I was going to say, my apologies here. The Cream City, in the questionnaire that's going to be going out in the survey, there are specific questions regarding leadership and the alliance and engagement. And I think that'll be a great resource as we continue to move forward. And I appreciate the work and being that this is always an open opportunity to bring individuals to step forward not only on the steering committee, but there's plenty of leadership opportunities. And we need to do our part as a collective to reach out as we look to bring people into leadership. It not only geographical, but all of diversity, human diversity, just to make sure we're best represented, and we're working towards removing any barriers that would prevent that. So Daniel, your team's gonna work, and then we will come back with this conversation and have a final slate at the October meeting. Is that correct? That's our goal.
Yes, that is the goal.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Great, and this all sounds great. Thank you, Daniel. So I think it would also be helpful to have a really clear statement of what it is the steering committee does and how it relates to both the executive council and to the goals, because I find myself increasingly confused, and the role of the steering committee has shifted since the kind of reboot of Chicago Wilderness. And I think it would be really helpful for making good decisions about who's on the committee to really understand what it will be doing in the next couple of years.
That's a very good point. And I think, we've recently developed, I think, as part of the conversations with ICL, some new visuals, visual guides to help kind of make sense of all of the chaos and all of the different groups. And that, honestly, that's also why we prioritized having like one-on-one conversations with folks, so that we can help kind of walk them through that process. And it definitely won't get us all the way there, but it'll at least give folks a really good idea to kind of digest it on their own time, ask very direct questions, and then have someone there who can help walk them through that process. But yes, very, very good point, Susan.
Great, thank you.
Oh, that's great. And just, I think it's always good, and we talk about this, we jump in, and it is confusing. And just to go back to kind of where we've been and kind of where we're at, that the executive council under the current guidelines that we operate under is the governing body. That's where the votes take place, is today's meeting. We do that 4 times a year. And the steering committee, its role is basically to oversight of our hired coordinator, and then to handle the business operations, but also to help shepherd, kind of team things up for council meetings, kind of being there to help organize. But there's plenty of ways to ensure that all of these groups, the final authority is not to the steering committee. And we are just like the facilitators to keep things moving and open and connecting with what goes on with an alliance that is part of all of us, with many moving parts. Any other questions on nominations? All right, thank you, Daniel, and I look forward to interested individuals stepping forward, or others making recommendations to encourage others to step forward. All right, now we're on for reports from our working groups and committees. And so whoever would like to share with what's going on, please do so. Just unmute yourself or raise your hand and jump right in.
Hey everyone, this is Ralph Schultz. I'm co-chair of the Excellence in Ecological Restoration Program. Just wanted to let everybody know that we received 5 applications this year, and our 7 commission members are fanning out across the region now and should be completed with site evaluations in early August.
Excellent, thanks, Ralph.
This is Cherie Fisher with the U.S. Forest Service. When Jim presented the budget, my heart gave a little thump when he said there was no budget for Forest of Nature Awards, but of course that is for next year. For this year, we do in fact have the awards coming up. Their nominations are open right now. So these awards bring recognition to people in our region who are doing outstanding and inspiring work. The categories of people, organizations, programs, sites that you can nominate is very broad. It's just, inspiring work that's bold and goes sort of above and beyond what is the norm for the region. These are fun awards and a great way to bring recognition to small organizations. So the deadline for nominations is September 10th this year. That date is very carefully chosen to get us beyond Labor Day, but we probably are not going to be able to extend it in order to get the reviews done in time. We're hoping to have an in-person event this November, and that's not yet finalized. That's just aspirational. That would be for the Excellence in Ecological Restoration Awards and the Force of Nature Awards. So over the next few months, we'll be talking about and looking for sponsors, a location to have the event if it goes forward in person. We'll also be looking for reviewers for the Force of Nature Awards. And I have a handful of names who have expressed interest in the past, but that's going to be very important. We have review panels that include up to 15 people per year. So there's a lot of need for reviewers. It's not a huge lift, and it's a lot of fun reading in a kind of concentrated period that will be, I would say, late September, early October. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to Laura or to me. I'm the chair of the Force of Nature Awards, and I'm with the Forest Service, if I didn't say that already. So thanks.
Thank you, Cherie.
Any other working group or team leaders or goal group leaders would like to give an update? Please just unmute yourself and do so. I would love to hear your reports.
This is Cherie. I'll just add, I meant to mention, if you Google Chicago Wilderness Force of Nature Awards, it will bring you to the CW page. And there's a link on there both to the nomination form itself and to a sample nomination form if you want to see what will be asked before you start filling it out. As of yesterday, we had 4 nominations, at least partially completed in the system.
Which is great. And Maria did drop the links in the chat as well. Thanks, Maria.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in really quick and just mention for the CW Ag team as our next upcoming meeting on Thursday, August 5th from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. We're going to be doing some, we're going to continue our work in terms of getting ourselves organized, talking about subcommittees. We're still very much at an early stage in our work. So if there are folks on this call that would like to join into that or have recommendations for folks, we are always accepting new members or at least interested observers into our meetings. So please reach out to me if you're interested in being added to that list.
Thank you, Daniel. Great.
And this is Jim Anderson, and I'll report out on the goal number 1, healthy landscapes. The Natural Resource and Science team plans on meeting on August 4th from 12:15 to 3:15. And we're going to be looking at focusing on some sub-project areas, or as Michelle has identified them as work streams. So there's invasive species, controlled burning, oak ecosystems, urban tree canopy, priority plant and wildlife species, climate adaptations measures, which includes ecological sustainability, healthy landscape, nature-based solutions. We're also looking at volunteer stewardship, the wildlife task force. And then we're also going to be working on ecological research and data. And then also we have the grassland bird group. So there's also an aquatic task force that we want to re-engage. We did have a very good conversation with an agency that will be unnamed for the moment about the ecological research and the data collection. And so that's something that we believe we've got some headway on. And out of these, we have, for controlled burning, we have sort of a guiding group, Oak Ecosystems, Urban Tree Canopy. We have the Chicago Regional Tree Initiative, the priority species, at least for the wildlife species, we have identified leads on that. the volunteer stewardship. All of the land management agencies and other volunteer organizations have been working together. So we have a lead on that. The Wildlife Task Force, we have a lead on, and the Grassland Bird Group, there's a lead on. So we're going to try to bring these together. I'm also going to be passing the baton for the natural resource and science team off to my one of my staff members, Patty Vitt. I will still stay focused on the goal 1, but Patty and I are going to try to recruit people. So Ralph and Kathy and other people, we are looking for people to be stepping up and participating on a regular basis about healthy landscapes. So I'll probably be contacting you with a phone call to talk about that. So that's where we're at today. You know, we recognize that we're a little bit behind some of the other goal groups and are trying to catch up. So if anybody would like to participate or be willing to take up and take a leadership role or a co-leadership role, again, as David said, you can contact me and we can go forward from there. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I see in the chat, Mark Ullman, you've got an update on the hub.
Yeah, you know, I loved seeing the graphic before of the circle of the goals, and the hub kind of in the middle of it. And now we've been spending time making spokes to each of the goals, from the hub to the goals. We're about halfway through that process this summer, as you'll hear from these reports from the goal teams where they're at, and trying to take that all in. So it's an iterative process, but I wanted to report that we think we're on target for making features of the hub publicly available in about a month from now. Some editorial work to do, but gathering in what we're hearing from the goal teams and displaying it as a tool useful to the entire alliance. That's our goal, and I mean goal with a small g.
Thanks, Mark. Great work. And I see Michelle and Susan. You have an update on climate.
Sure. So our climate goal group's been meeting quite regularly, and Ted Hafner is not on this call today, but he is leaning into leading the project. We've divided it up into some sub goals or work streams, and those are adaptation, mitigation, social justice awareness, and engagement, education. And Susan, I smile because I always sort of muddle that a little bit, and there's some crossing of those items. In addition, we've met with the ag group, and we've also met with we met with 2 of the other groups. I am sorry, I am not well today, but we are starting to socialize, and I'm going to stop there and ask Susan to correct everything. Go ahead, Susan.
You did great, Michelle. So we've met with the ag group and the land protection groups, and we're planning to meet with all of the goal groups. So if you're involved in one of those, we'll be asking you to join us on Zoom. And also our goals, they cover these 5 sub goals and really represent the direction that Chicago Wilderness members can be embarking on, which align in many ways with the 30 by 30 goals. And so we're looking at how to kind of restructure the climate action team and the climate training and engagement team so that we can really efficiently work together on meeting these goals. So some internal process stuff as well, and look for an updated climate action plan for nature soon-ish. That's all I have.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Michelle, on the work. Amy, you have something as well for education.
Yes, I wanted to just share quickly on the Goal 5 team, nature access and benefits for people, which actually we had the education team participate in, which was amazing, and made connections also to the JEDI task force and the emerging professionals networking group. And so I wanted to say we had our first meeting where we looked through the goal and made a couple of decisions and earlier this month where we will look to further refine and revise the draft goal as it stands. And we heard rousing endorsements to really focus work on increasing programming connected to natural areas in underserved areas, either with low socioeconomic level or with communities of color, and also places that have historically not received kind of as much of that programming and attention. So that's where we connect to our map making friends for the next step. And second, also to increase the diversity of leadership around throughout all of the Chicago Wilderness Alliance, which is one of the sub goals of this team. We welcome additional folks to participate. I want to say, I think we had 70, 80 maybe on the guest list for this last meeting who opted in, and I think we had close to 50 participate. And we are looking for all those who are interested, including those who participated last time, for August 18th at 9 a.m. A Zoom meeting for our next goal team meeting. So thank you.
That's wonderful. So many great things happening. And just as a reminder to use our calendar out on the Alliance to upload when these meetings are taking place so that others that have an interest can join you and see what's going on. So awesome. Any other updates?
Yeah, Elizabeth, this is Jim Jarosol on I just dropped in the chat, but group 3, we've got a joint meeting with the mapping team on August 9th, where we can kind of compare notes and kind of get synchronized. And on the 26th of August, we have a full corporate council meeting, but we've basically taken the group 3 goal and broken it into 4 sub work streams or groups. One was corporate, industrial, school, university campuses. The other is focused on right-of-ways. The third, municipalities and residential. And then the 4th, tree canopy. And we're making progress and have the sub groups kind of broken out and continue to march forward.
Thank you, Jim.
I have an update from Stacy Myers, who wasn't able to join the call today, but she sent me an update from the Healthy Waters Aquatic Resource Goal. And they met last week, and they met on Monday to start compiling metrics for an index. They're setting another meeting within the next few weeks to discuss the metrics, which can be realistically employed across the ecoregion. And finally, they will explore which index best accommodates the metrics and would best serve to advance their common goals around aquatic resources. During this process, she's requesting layers for the Chicago Wilderness Data Hub, and we'll also look forward to collaborating with groups centered around other goals over the next few months. She indicated that she's spoken with Mark Bowman and is looking forward to scheduling a time to have the hub group connect with them, and we'll also reach out to the climate group shortly. I also see that Maria dropped into the chat a link, and I'm going to talk about that further in a moment. But one of the things that we want to encourage all of our teams, working groups, and goals to do is to continue to submit their meeting information to me. We've done some really great work on the back end to be able to capture the links and also create sortable a data file so that, and I can just go right into that next, I guess, unless there's anyone else that has an update. Does anyone else have an update? Okay, so as you can see, oops, I hit that. As you can see, we have always had a calendar to do our calendar events, but we've created the ability to be able to sort that, and we can sort it by award opportunity, funding opportunities, Chicago Wilderness events or meetings, or just a public program event or meeting. And so if you can see here on this slide, when you go to submit your information, you can just select which category it is. And then when we put it into the database, it'll be able to sort by that. And that's really going to be useful for us as we are continuing to push out information. And we were also able to sort of continue to compile now that we're able to get outside post-COVID, we were always able to get outside, but now we're continuing to advance our adventure resources so that people can connect with the resources and get outside and explore the nature around them. Finally, and I think Maria's going to drop this into the chat as well, we did do some updates on the front end to incorporate our new Green Vision goals and the language. And I think that when you come to our site, it's much more clear what our work streams are, and we're going to continue to work on encouraging our partners and our members to submit names of their staff that are interested in getting involved and hearing from us. And all you have to do is just send us their email and their names, and we'll get them included into the database so they can start receiving the information and hopefully participating in the future. And that's it.
Thank you, Laura. Anyone have any questions or thoughts, ideas? I really appreciate the work you and Maria have been doing, and the feedback that you've received, and just making that area and the portal just more accessible, and a lot of resource information to be shared with everybody. So I think that's great. Thank you. Great job.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, so now we'll come to the point where we've got announcements. We have our next meeting on October 20th, so save the date, and then we're at announcements. So anyone want to share, shout out, good news? What we got going on? Oh, don't be shy. Well, I'll say one, and then maybe that'll help stimulate that. I just want to say a thank you to the McHenry County Conservation Foundation, Illinois Audubon Society, and the Illinois Clean Energy Community Foundation, and donors. We were able, in partnership with the McHenry County Conservation District, to purchase one of the last remaining high-quality natural areas that were under permanent protection in McHenry County now, thanks to donor support, about 160 acres. Basically, it was an old Boy Scout camp known as Camp Lakota, and adds to our Brookdale Conservation Area where our administrative offices are. So now that is permanently protected. The foundation, through this plan, will be transferring that over to the Conservation District within 3 to 5 years. So I think that's great news. It shows, obviously hits that land goal, working on high quality natural restoration, and again, a great story. So thank you to all our donors and partners that helped with that.
Well, on behalf of the Boy Scout Council, that I was sad to see that we lost the ownership, but Elizabeth, now that it's underneath your ownership, a lot of us can breathe a lot easier. So we're glad that it didn't go for some type of land development net. And then also to brag about one of our scouts that he earned since 1916, a little over 1,200 Hornet A conservation silver awards. It means he does 4 conservation projects in 8 out of 8 different subject areas. And he was the first, last, and only scout in the inside the Chicago wilderness boundaries to have received this. And he did all of his projects during the COVID, and he'll be awarded it this in August, Saturday, August 28th at the Methodist Church in Arlington Heights. So it's quite an achievement for this senior student at Freund High School that made this choice.
And Elizabeth, I just would like to also say congratulations, but what a great example of public-private partnership. I mean, all the players, complicated, but coming together and to achieve such a significant goal. So really a model, I think, for all of us. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you. And there's a lot of models. I mean, that's what the Alliance is. And I think we're trying to capture those types of stories, and so that we can leverage that and use that, because there's a lot of great stories that are happening across the 4-state region.
And one other thing that that we haven't unleashed yet, and that's the power of our teenage people that are interested in sustainability in the green field, and that we haven't really empowered them to get involved with understanding what the alliance is, the partnerships that are there, and so on, that they can grow. And so somehow we've got to involve the teens of our that are connected with our respective agencies somehow, to each one of us to bring a teen to the website and so on, and have them be co-participants with us so that they can learn how to be critical thinkers and doers and decision makers along with us.
Good thoughts. Thank you, Wayne. Absolutely. Anyone else? Mark?
Yeah, I don't see any of our colleagues from Fish and Wildlife Service here today, so I think it's important to draw your attention to something I just put in the chat, and that is that they've released a visioning document for conservation in the Kankakee National Wildlife Refuge and Conservation Area, and there's a public comment period right now that closes on July 30th or 31st. I would really recommend you look at the visioning document, even if you don't know the area. They've done, I think, a wonderful job of listening to community partners. Not that it necessarily will change some people's minds, but I think it's a really quality effort, and suggests some positive signs in that particular geography. So,
Thank you. Jerry?
Sure. Just a quick update. I know many of you have heard about efforts, to create a civilian climate corps, civilian conservation corps. The president, as part of his America the Beautiful and his domestic climate initiative, is supporting it. There were various legislation introduced by different members of both the House and Senate. Leadership has come here from Illinois with Senator Durbin and Congressman Rush. In fact, the Renew Conservation Corps Act that they outlined is really closest to what the president has proposed. And fortunately, just 2 days ago, all the members of Congress who have supported some form or another have come together, united front. 80 members of the House and Senate have signed on. So it's very exciting. I mean, where it happens, when it happens, will it be part of infrastructure? Probably not, although there's some talk that it might. Most likely reconciliation. Organizations now can sign on as well. And so I can maybe work with Laura, and we could get an announcement out. And so those of you who would like to support this would be able to do that very simply. It's just a form you fill out, a couple questions. But anyway, tremendous momentum and growing support around the country that I think could benefit so many of our public agencies and not-for-profits, because they would all qualify, for this. So I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you for your leadership on that and the connections. Anybody else?
I have a real quick one. We have, just in the vein of good news, we have more Blandings turtles in our incubators right now than we've ever had. We have 216. We've never passed 200, and so we'll have to. We're not counting them before they've hatched, although clearly that's more nests than we've ever collected. A lot of them are recaptures. Some of them are ones we reintroduced. They're not laying yet, but we're visiting them. Once they hatch, they'll go up to Jim Anderson in Lake County, and we call it going to camp for 8 months. And then they come back a little bigger, but we got a lot this year, so it's exciting.
Do you have a chance to sign that contract?
That's wonderful. Great news. Success stories. Love to hear all of that. Love that. Well, a lot going on. I think everybody, we're at our stop time for today. 2 hours went by just so quickly here with everything that we've got going on. So again, just as a reminder, we do have a meeting this afternoon with steering committee and our goal leads. And anybody else that has expressed an interest, of course, doors always open and for transparency to participate, but we'll keep you in the loop with what all good news. Keep going strong, stay safe and well. I know there's a lot going on with different variants and such. And just the work that we do as a region is really important. So my thanks, and on behalf of everyone else. So if we have a motion to adjourn for today.
Yes, so moved.
Thank you, Susan. Do we have a second?
Second, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, all those in favor to adjourn?
I
Aye.